It's midday right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to Lunchtime Politics. We track everything politics and the polity right here at midday. And we're excited because for the first time in a long while, political conversations have kicked off not with mudslinging. They started with debate over issues that concerns you and I and all the investors. What is it? You'll find out in just a moment. Let's get started with the headlines. Welcome. The debates on whether or not to return petroleum subsidies still continues to divide the polity. The proponent and ADC presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar doubles down on his position. Former president of Liberia and Africa's only Ballon d'Or winner, George Oponwe, seeks judicial independence across the continent during NBA's annual general meeting. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Before we get to the core of the conversation on the program today, let's tell you what has been playing out in the nation's capital, Abuja, where the Hotel and Personnel Services Senior Staff Association, an affiliate of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, TUC, is picketing the Abuja Continental Hotel over issues surrounding the unionization of its workers and what it calls freedom of association. Members of the union and other affiliates who came out as early as 6 a.m. today also decried what they call unfair labor practices and indecent working conditions. The unions who blocked the entrance of the hotel say all efforts to meet the management of the hotel have been rebuffed. And away from that, former president of Liberia, George Weah, is calling on members of the legal profession to strengthen the rule of law while warning that democracy cannot be built on strong men, but on strong institutions. The former footballer turned politician made his call in Port Harcourt, the River State capital, while delivering the keynote address at the Nigerian Bar Association Annual General Conference with the theme Beyond Limits.
We are reminded that when Nigeria gained independence on October 1st, 1960, there were a lot of hopes that Nigeria was going to be the beacon of Africa, was going to be like the lighthouse that was going to guide many African nations to greatness. 66 years after, and this is our 66th Annual General Conference, that hope remains to be realized.
The ultimate aim of law is to protect and advance citizens' security and their well-being by assuring equity before the law, safeguarding the fundamental human rights of all, and fostering an environment conducive to social economic activities and national development. Therefore, it is evident that order, peace, and meaningful human progress prevail wherever the law is treated as sovereign.
Democracy does not survive on strength of elections alone. Elections are now the doorway into democracy, not the horse itself. What holds us up, what keeps the roof from collapsing on the people live inside it, are institutions, and among the most important of these in every serious nation is an independent judiciary protected by a fearless principle bar.
The world in which we practice is changing rapidly. Technology is transforming legal research, case management, and the delivery of legal services. While artificial intelligence is raising new technical questions, both for the bar and the bench, we must be prepared to understand this development and use them responsibly.
Well, those are some of the remarks from the guest, the governor of Rivers State, the NBA president, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, represented by the Chief Judge of Rivers State, all giving their own their takes on the conference theme. But let's move from there to tell you that As a part of efforts to strengthen the political chances of the YPP, that's a Young Progressive Party, the party has elected Mr. Peter Agada as its presidential candidate. Mr. Agada is replacing Mrs. Anita Zugwai-Chukwu, emerging as a presidential candidate in an emergency National Executive Committee meeting of the party monitored by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Abuja. In his acceptance speech, Mr. Agada makes a pledge to tackle poverty, insecurity, and unemployment in the country. And former federal lawmaker Senator Shehu Sani is criticizing calls for the return of fuel subsidy, saying those making such calls are out to deceive Nigerians. Mr. Sani, who served in the 8th Senate from 2015 to 2019, believes those suggesting the return of fuel subsidy are playing politics, adding that subsidy that President Bola Tinubu is working on revamping the nation's refineries. Human rights activists charges the federal government to take steps to address the suffering of Nigerians occasioned by the subsidy removal.
The return of subsidy will not bring down the prices of commodities. It will simply distort the economic stability of our country. So I know very well that the removal of subsidy is causing a lot of hardships and economic suffering in the lives of our people. And it has been one policy that has created bad blood between the ordinary Nigerians and this administration. But addressing the problem is not going back to the past, but moving towards the future. Let us appreciate the fact that President Tinubu has pledged to revamp our refineries. And I know that there are people who want to sell these refineries. So, and they are not making a statement about it until maybe when they have power on their own hands. But as far as I'm concerned, his claim is misleading. His claim is not true. His claim is simply a political Trojan horse to garner votes. And I don't think if he is in power, he will ever think of removing. But because it's promises made by politicians, naturally. A politician can make a promise when he gets there and then he uses some certain issues and say that is the reason why he can't do this, he cannot do that. But I think it's very important also for the federal government to know that the reform programs need a human face. In the sense that as an oil-producing country, we should not be suffering.
All right, Senator Shehu Sani. So the polity is divided as to, do we bring back subsidy? The federal government has a plethora of macroeconomic indicators, stability of the economy, which they've said is in the right direction. Nigerians should patiently wait. Well, Atiku has rocked that boat and said, we need to be alive to enjoy the subsidy, whatever it is that will bring in the long term. And he's making a proposal, an adjustment to target production subsidy. Now, the details are not as clear as crystal, but it looks like a proposal people are beginning to consider because there's a problem here. It's called the macro-micro disconnect. And if you avoid what we call aggregation bias, you'll know that the macro elements are not wrong, neither is the micro element wrong. So what do I mean? Whether it's foreign reserve, all of the big numbers and the indicators that the government put out to say this is in the right direction, investors coming in, FPIs, I can go on and on. But on the other flip side, 63% poor people, poverty rate is 63%. Multidimensional poverty, which has to do with access, is over 120 million people. The cost of living is very troubling. So on both sides, everybody's right. So who can bridge that gap is the big conversation. My guest is a petroleum engineer and a public affairs analyst, Zaka Bala. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and I greet our viewers across the globe.
Where do you stand?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, immediately some of our leaders, probably they were misguided or they felt in their wisdom subsidy removal was the right thing to do. Immediately steps were taken to remove subsidy on petroleum products or distillates, like probably 8-10 years ago. Immediately that step was taken, I knew that Nigeria was headed towards what I can best describe as economic Golgotha. Immediately, some of our leaders took steps and started insisting and started removing subsidy right from kerosene, diesel, and the rest. It was very clear that Nigeria was on the wrong trajectory and the Nigerian economy was going to end up in the evil forest. And I can explain. It was very clear also when the insistence came and subsidy was finally removed, I concluded that nations are not cursed, but nations can be led by irresponsible or misguided or bad economic managers. And as far as I was concerned, Nigeria was being led or misguided by bad economic managers.
I'll give you the numbers. So we talk data.
No worries.
So, as I've said, both sides have a strong argument.
No
and
worries.
we can't debate with data. Whether it's the debt service to revenue numbers, whether it's the gross or net foreign reserves, whether it's some of the social intervention programs, which that one we may argue about efficiency, inadequacy, and all of that. But if you look at it, generally, our FPI's Q1, our capital importation, I should say, it came to about $10 billion in real terms, although the FDI was less than $200 million. When you look at what the government has done in terms of CBN holding interest rate as high as it did, and then stability of the currency, it has attracted a lot of hot money. And then the import substitution with the Dangote refinery, the crude for Naira, is it crude for, yeah? Naira for crude sales that has reduced pressure on FX demand. So I just want to go through all the things that the federal government will always put, because it looks like in this election, towards this election, we're going to be repeating ourselves. The argument here is that it hasn't had the trickle-down effect on the masses. This side is going to be on the long term. That people who are saying, change this course of action are hasty and they are not going to benefit in the long term. So Atiku is saying, I'm not going to bring back consumption subsidy. I'll do targeted production subsidy. But do you also hear the federal government? Because to their credit, the macroeconomic numbers, they've been fairly good with it.
I will talk to you from the point of knowledge, not from the point of rhetorics or politics.
No, data.
Yes, so I'll talk to you. As far as I'm concerned, when you talk about economic data in Nigeria, I have respect for statistics. But in the context of statistics, I will prefer to work with simple arithmetic. Because in arithmetic, 1 + 1 is 2. But in Nigerian statistics, 1 + 1 is never 2 and may never be 2. 1 + 1 is X plus an error margin. And most of the statistics figures in Nigeria come with almost 100% error margins. And let me explain. It's strange that many people don't even know what subsidy is all about. And let me define it for them today. Subsidy is a universally accepted and validated economic pain cushioning concept. Just like democracy. Democracy is a universally accepted and a defined concept of governance. Just like amnesty when you're looking for peace. So if subsidy is not working in your country, first of all, that will never in any way vitiate or invalidate its global relevance. Check your country internally. You're talking about a country with more than 200 million citizens, right? Relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. You don't need anybody to tell you that strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors will suffer and collapse. You live in a country where, like everybody knows, you have this volume of crude oil. You have this volume of gas. But distillates are not available. Everybody knows that those sectors have collapsed. The numbers are there. So when anybody is giving me GDP figures, this is the way I analyze GDP figures. When you talk about GDP figures, right, you have what we call the consumer consumption variables. what is happening to that variable? That consumer variable, consumption variable is down because disposable income has been eroded by inflation and the devaluation of the naira. Everybody knows that when you're talking about GDP, the business investment variable is also down. Local investors and foreign investors are not coming in because they cannot afford the cost of diesel. Only diesel. I will get to petrol, the one that messed up the whole economy. So we had a chronology. When you're talking about bringing an economy out of the woods, look, I don't contextualize or situate it on an individual, because individuals, whether as leaders or gladiators, will come and go. It is the economy that will be there.
Let me play the devil's advocate here.
Play it.
So what are you saying in essence? Because I want to understand your argument. Should subsidy have been removed in the first place?
No.
Did you know what the government meant in the first place?
What did the government...
The economy was on the brink. I can go on to talk about the debt. I can go on to talk about the FX backlog. I can go on to talk about a couple of other things. States were
can we cut the chase? Can we cut the chase?
I just wanted to reel out, in terms of numbers, the encumbrance of this government came to between 21 to almost 30 trillion.
I already told you something about statistics.
Yeah, if you add, no, you can't discuss economics without statistics. It's not
go ahead.
It's not an emotional conversation.
Correct.
It's a statistical conversation.
Correct.
So we have to, because that's where I'm going to with this, because people are saying, people who are welcoming Atiku's idea, as long as he's going to relieve people, is to say, when it comes to economic numbers, something must give. As we speak, the macros are good, some of it, not all of it. The
like
states,
which?
The macro, of course, our reserve has increased, as a matter of fact. States have more allocation.
How does it translate into practical lives of Nigerians?
That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying we cannot deny what is available. We cannot deny that they're having record fact numbers, at least in Naira terms. We can debate about the dollar terms, a different kettle of fish. We cannot deny the FX reserve that we have. We cannot deny the foreign exchange stability. We cannot deny some of the social intervention. The point we are making here is that how it will trickle down to the ordinary man, which is the micro element, is the debate that people are now having. Atiku is saying he's going to do that. But the counter argument is, has he counted the cost on the macro if he reverses the policy with production subsidy? I don't know whether I get my drift.
I got your point. When you even started, you said, did I know what was happening before? I will give you reasons, very frivolous reasons that were given by previous government. And I will start with one. There was a government, right, probably like 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, that told us that one of the reasons why they felt they needed to do away with subsidy, right, and deregulate the economy was because vandals were stealing about 400,000 barrels of Nigerian crude oil. That was given by a Nigerian finance minister, even outside the country. And do you know what? Many people don't know what a barrel of crude oil is. A barrel of crude oil is actually 42 gallons. So when you say 400,000 barrels of crude oil, first of all, you are saying about 16 million gallons of crude oil were being stolen or were stolen every day. And if you convert that to liters by multiplying by 4, you're talking about 67 million liters of crude oil stolen per day. Let me now come down to the math. And if you divide that by the capacity of a tanker, that means the point that the government then was presenting was that Nigeria was losing about, because the capacity of a tanker is about 33,000 liters. Nigeria was losing about 2,000 tankers of crude oil per day. It was clear lie, and if it was truly happening, that could never have been happening because of petty thieves. It must have been a well-crafted and a well-syndicated criminality.
So what is your argument?
My argument...
So let's stay on this point you raised now. Is your argument that it wasn't happening, or that if it is happening, it's at institutional level? What is it?
If it was ever happening, it was an organized and syndicated criminality that had nothing to do with Nigerians. So, but let me come down to the basics now. If you look at what has happened now, you know, I talked about the 3 sectors. Strategic domestic sectors, let us start with that. Because of the removal of subsidy, on petroleum product, let me tell you, if you go, the economy is prostrate at that level. All these micro and SMEs that you are talking about, they are flat on the ground. Then when you talk about strategic industrial sectors, where you talk about the manufacturing sectors and the rest, and even you talk about those operating in the oil and gas industry, manufacturing industries, I can tell you their profit and everything has gone down. But many Nigerians don't believe. If you think most of these companies you are seeing are doing well, go to the banks. I was, as a chartered accountant, I go through financial records. They are in pains. If you go to hospitals now, many things cannot be carried out because there is no basic petrol or crude oil. If you go to the hospitals, it's the same thing. You go to schools, there are the labs, they don't have anything.
We have crossed the fairly, to be fair to the government.
Which government?
I mean the government in power now.
Okay, go ahead.
We have achieved to a fair extent energy security.
No.
No, just hold on, just hold on. This is a fact. What we haven't done, what we are struggling with, energy affordability. What do I mean?
What's the difference between security and affordability?
So security simply
you must afford before you see. You call
just,
it
just hold on. You know,
security.
we're queuing before. If we didn't have domestic refining capacity, for instance, what had happened in Iran would have had a very humongous effect on us. But what had happened is that we had petrol available to us, but people cannot afford to buy. So to that extent, it was affordability was a problem, not availability. So where I'm going to with this is that, because I'm trying to push counterpoints for you, who is a proponent of the subsidy. What do you think will happen to, because they are also saying that if you return production subsidy and cap price for any reason, because what Atiku Abubakar is doing is work with NMDPRA to know exact quantity of liters of petrol we need, and then give that quantity, the relevant quantity of crude to those local refiners at discounted price, which will have a knock-on effect at pump price for us to buy it at reduced upon. First, our production is not enough. We're still struggling. Second argument they have is that it will discourage, because it's a free market, it will discourage investors in the sector. I want you to respond to that.
So let me start by telling you this. You see, many of the people presenting these arguments to you, I'm telling you, they have not thought through, they have been misguided, and the answers are practically there. You are talking about a country that has 4 functional refineries, right? We are supposed to look like, when you talk about...
4 functional refineries?
That we're supposed to, that supposed to have 4 functional refineries.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yes. 4 functional refineries, but none is working. All I can tell you is our refineries and those we saddle with those responsibilities allow those refineries to be sabotaged, and they can best be described as economic vampires and economic marauders. All the OPEC member nations, tell me one OPEC member nation that does not have state-owned refineries that are functional. None. Right? That is what I want to tell you. Somebody came up with the argument that when we remove subsidy, right, so much money was made available to the subnationals. And I ask a very simple question. Go and show me one state where, because you remove subsidy, had enough money for subnationals. Now, if you go, you will see public water in taps. None. In those days, right, you could go when children close from schools, especially primary school, and they are thirsty, they could go to public taps.
I know Enugu is making an attempt.
So if you look at it, that doesn't happen. That's how ordinary this thing has become. Where are the monies? Then second, I'm taking you step by step. Show me one state, because they collected so much money. If you go, you will see public toilets. None. But I can mention states, mention public parks where you cannot find those. But let me give you a practical example with Federal Capital Territory. FCT belongs to all of us. So nobody will say I'm criticizing their states. If you go to FCT, there is a place called a park called Mabushi. From Mabushi, you can go to other parts of Nigeria, right? Because of insecurity, some of us will want to fly, but we cannot afford the flight, but we will go there. If you go there, no public toilet. That's how. So let me tell you what, even the monies they say are available, what you can visibly see. Let me just get to that point. What you can visibly see today, right, are all brands of crazy model cars that are being used by some politicians, some religious leaders, and probably political
I think the failure of the subnational is not in doubt. A lot of them, because even the president is tired of them. So just so the president has even said, I have the knife and the yam. When he was threatening them about local government autonomy, well, I don't think it's serious enough, because if he wanted to do it, he would do it. So I'm not doubting. My question has to do with, you know, there are three people involved in this subsidy debates. The most important are you and I, citizens.
Correct.
Then there is government, which is our government.
Yes.
Whether it's subnational or federal.
Correct.
Then there are investors.
Correct.
Which are critical. I want you to speak to the sentiment of those investors. And there are two sets of investors here. Somebody said to me that the producers, which is the Dangotes, the Aradels, the Walter Smiths of this world that are producing, may not have a problem. But petroleum product importers will have a problem. So, but look at the investment climate and as a professional, do you think that if we reverse subsidy through targeted production subsidy, we're still going to be able to attract the kind of investment or sustain investment climate that we've had in the oil and gas sector?
See, first of all, before I talk about that, what is the responsibility of the government of a country? Your responsibility as a government is to provide goods and services for private individuals and corporate individuals. So corporate individuals qualify as investors. But what I want to let you know, when you talk about the responsibility of the government, right, look at the individuals. As I speak to you right now, if at the end of the day, an Okada rider will spend 13,000 Nigerian naira to buy 10 liters of petrol, tell me how many people he is going to carry or commute with before he recovers. Take a vulcanizer, because that's why I told you I'm a practicing petroleum engineer and I'm a chartered accountant. So I'm talking to you from the point of knowledge. I know you have the data. If you meet a vulcanizer and that vulcanizer buys 10 liters of petrol, right, at 12,000 Nigerian naira, tell me how many tires he will vulcanize before he or she breaks even. You and I are talking about a situation where, as I speak to you right now, a bag of fertilizer is about 55,000 Nigerian naira. 2 bags of fertilizer are more than the minimum wage of a Nigerian. Okay. 100 liters of petrol is more than the minimum wage of a Nigerian. So what is anybody telling me here? I think
the practical...
so let's look at the realities.
Like I said at the very beginning, we will be repeating ourselves a lot until somebody wins this argument.
Nobody is not to be won. It's not to be won, but to be on the right track.
No, I'm not talking about you and I.
Yes.
I'm saying that both two facts are correct all at the same time. The bridge is what we're trying to look for an answer. Even my small car that I drive, I used 13,000 before. Now, if I want to fill that tank, it's between 70 to 90,000.
Let me tell you.
On the mood of
so
the PMS
please, can we be honest? That was why I said our leaders are truly bad economic managers.
We're totally out of time. We're going to bring this engagement even further. But thank you. Zaka Bala is a petroleum engineer and public affairs analyst. What a great moment having you here on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it on the program. Thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Osama. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.